All right.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday, and Thursdays typically we have our regular co host on, and that is Old Soul. Now, if you look at Old Soul, she has a different backdrop because she's in a different place. Old Soul is helping people out in her own home, and now she's branching out and she's going to be talking to prisoners in a prison. No, she's not looking for a date. she's what are you going to talk to these prisoners about when you go give that talk?
Their right to vote, and they should exercise it. And I had some pretty good ideas for as far as like how they could vote and be secure, because certain people like to think other people shouldn't vote, and they find reasons for them not to.
Right.
So one of the suggestions that I had, I don't know if they're going to listen or not because prisons run how they run, but my suggestion was to post because they have tablets in there. So my suggestion was for them to post like the candidates and stuff so that they can research it ahead of time. And then when their ballots come in, they can just like do it in a room or in front of a guard or whatever, fill everything out because they already know who they're going to vote for and seal it right there. So it's witnessed. And then that way they don't have to worry about verification and stuff. But we'll see how they work out the logistics. But I just want them to exercise their right to vote. It's like this whole big block of our population that's not exercising their rights. And I kind of feel like they'll be open to doing it.
Yeah, I think they probably will. I mean, I've never been in prison. I mean, not for an extended period of time. So I had a little run-ins when I was young with a jail, but that was only a few hours. Anyway, um, let me ask you
Yeah, I was
this.
looking up some statistics, but it's not happening here. But there are other states like Texas, Alabama. They're all down south, but they're doing convict leasing. And so just recently, I don't know if you know this or not, but like Alabama was letting the prisoners leave the prison during the day and they would like go work in fast food restaurants and then they would come back to the prison.
Wow.
But the inmates weren't getting the fast food pay. They were getting their inmate pay of like 25 cents an hour or whatever it is, right? And it's kind of like free labor. And so that recently they were doing that. So I have like some stories in Texas right now. They have like black inmates picking cotton and all this weird stuff.
Wow.
So I was going to talk to them about the, convict leasing, how important it is to have, you want to reduce recidivism and you want to be able to have programs in place where you can come out and it's not so hard to get back on your feet. And
Right.
so there are candidates who do care about those issues. So, I do think that it would be beneficial for them to exercise that right. And then maybe if enough of them do, we'll start seeing some changes in the system because people don't realize when they go to prison, they're going to come back into society with misdemeanor charges.
Right.
They're going to come back. So you should want them to come back and be contributing and not fall back into those criminal ways that they have.
Let me ask you this. What you're going to be doing, you haven't done it yet. You're doing it tomorrow. You're in a small town outside of where you live, a ways away from where you
Yeah.
live. You notice the backdrop, it's different with Old Souls because you're in a hotel room right now, right? Okay.
Hmm.
Now, clearly, these men in this prison need this information. It's valuable information for them and the country and all that stuff. Do you have any
They need it.
indication? Do you have any indication whether they care or want to hear it? Or are you just walking in there blind saying, here I am, this is what you need to know, and hope against hope that they're going to be listening and be respectful?
Well, I know that I can't say I know if they're interested because I know sometimes they just want to like get out of their cells, have something else to
Right.
do. But I do know that I'm doing two segments on Thursday and then two segments on Friday. So and the each one of them is filled up. So I don't know if they just want to be out of their cells or if they are legitimately interested, but their butts is going to be in the seat. So it's up to me to hold their attention and make sure they absorb the information,
Well,
basically.
and I don't think that'll be a problem. People who listen to the show know exactly who you are and what you have to say, and you do command a certain amount of attention, and I think you will. In addition to being an attractive young woman in a prison. What the fuck were you thinking? You're going to walk in there.
I was
Um,
I was thinking there's a whole group of people over here who can vote and they're not. It's like
so, so
where there's a like if there's a need, then somebody should fill that need, right? So there's a need, I'm gonna fill it, and like, maybe one day Biden will call me and say, "Thank you for having all these convicts vote for me." I don't.
well, and I think most people who listen to the show know who Old Soul is and what kind of woman she is. But um, I'm guessing you're doing this talk tomorrow in this prison about voting because you're getting big money, right? You're getting paid big money for doing this. How much
No,
you
I'm
get?
doing my civic duty.
You're doing it for nothing, right?
I'm doing my civic duty. Yep.
There you go. And that's the kind of person that Old Soul is. She brings people into her house that are dealing with reproductive medical problems. She opens her home to strangers, and now she's going to a prison to talk to folks and try to inform them as to what their constitutional right is and why they should exercise it. I feel like such a shitty human being every time I talk to you because I'm not doing enough compared to you.
Are you kidding me? You run a podcast 7 days a week, rain, sleet, snow, sick, not sick, tired, traveling, babysitting. Trust me,
Yeah,
you're doing your part.
yeah, but I'm sitting in my living room about 25 feet from my refrigerator. I got pretty much everything I fucking need. So,
I got my water.
yeah, you got your water. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't leave without my jug.
I have to have some water when I'm doing this too, because especially if I'm doing it myself, I get dried out and then it's pretty much over. So people will see me pick up
Yeah.
this generic water bottle, which probably pisses you off, right? That I'm using plastic water bottles.
Not me so much as my daughter.
Yeah, yeah. Tell her I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have to apologize to my wife too. Well, anyway, the big news in politics yesterday was we had Super Tuesday. Um,
Yeah.
Donald Trump won most of the primaries, which we knew he would. Nikki Haley
Yeah.
did win in Vermont, but Nikki Haley stepped up today, as I kind of suggested she might, and what'd she do? She suspended her campaign. And the whole reason is not because she didn't want to continue, it's because the money's going to dry up now after you lose 15, 16 primaries. The people are going to say, well, I'm not putting any more money into that. Were you surprised
Yeah.
that she backed out? And were you surprised that she didn't endorse Donald Trump? She did kind of the opposite.
I wasn't surprised that she backed out. But I am kind of surprised that she didn't endorse him. And then I still think that there's time for her to endorse him. I just think that right now she might need a scab to come over that wound a little bit first, and then she will. But then again, she could just be like me because I'm pretty stubborn, and if I were her, you couldn't pay me to endorse Trump.
Yeah.
So I don't really know which way she's gonna go, but I was predicting she'd drop out because I mean, if you don't have any money, you don't have any choices. So
Yeah. Well, do you think, the whole strategy for her in this situation was she knew she couldn't beat him in the primaries, so that she was just waiting out to see if Donald Trump got put in jail or had a mental breakdown or some kind of physical breakdown, and she'd step in and being the heir apparent. Um, I think she may be still waiting for that because if that does happen, if he crashes somehow and can't continue, then who's going to be the candidate? The only obvious one right now is Nikki Haley, but I don't honestly believe the Republicans would settle for Nikki Haley as the candidate. But at least in her mind, she it's like in the movie Dumb and Dumber when Jim Carrey asked uh, what's the woman's name? Holly. Her last name is Holly. He said, "What's the chances of a guy like me going out with a girl like you?" And she says, 1 in a million. And he goes, "So you're saying I have a chance?" And that's the way Nikki
Right.
Haley's looking at this too. So you say I might have a chance. I think she might be just kind of hanging around, keeping her high profile just in case something goes south for Donald Trump, and it almost certainly will.
She could be, but they all suspended their campaign. No one says like, "That's it, I quit, I'm out." They all
True.
suspended it. I think if something happened to Trump, they would look at Nikki Haley as non-threatening, I guess. And
Yeah.
I could see a couple of them jumping back in. In particular, I think Chris Christie might jump back in, and then I could see maybe Ron DeSantis. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe Vivek would do it too.
But none of them really garner enough support to really give them any hope in the November election. I mean, as it is with Donald
Mhm.
Trump, he's got problems. This whole Nikki Haley thing, while he soundly beat her in just about every primary except Vermont and DC, um, there was a large percentage of people that voted against Donald Trump and voted for Nikki Haley. And there were some exit
Mhm.
polls taken. And in these exit polls, it sounds like 35% of the people said, no way am I ever going to vote for Donald Trump. Now, these are Republicans. And
Yep.
that spells, I don't know that Donald Trump understands this, but I know there are other smart Republicans that understand this. If you've got 30% of your party that won't vote for your candidate, there's zero chance you're going to win the election. Donald Trump may not grasp this, but that is a bad sign for the Republicans come the presidential election.
Yeah, there's plenty of people in the Republican Party who know. And there's people who try to sound the alarm, but when they do that, Trump attacks them and they get turned into a rhino or, what Democrats or whatever. So I do think that Trump is ignorant to his current situation, but that's just because he just wants to ignore reality. I don't know if he thinks it's
Yeah,
just going to go away or I don't know what he's thinking, but I do think that he is intentionally being ignorant to the situation. Because anytime someone tries to tell him the truth, he just ignores it.
yeah,
So I think they're just rocking with it. But one thing Nikki Haley did was leave like Hansel and Gretel like breadcrumbs
right,
because when all the exit polls, the people that were voting for her, what they were saying, where they were at, the conditions in those states, like those types of things, it just lets the Biden campaign know where they need to be, who they need to talk to, and they already know what these people are thinking. And so they have an opportunity to take advantage of that information. So they know which states to go to and which groups to target in each state. So I do think that her staying in the race was so beneficial to Biden because it just gave him a heads up on what the other half of the Republican Party
right.
is thinking.
Absolutely. And you know what Nikki Haley did, she did not endorse Donald Trump. That may be a
Mhm.
surprise to some folks, but what she did say was that she hopes Donald Trump can earn the votes from the people that didn't vote for him. And what she's saying basically, those people who voted for me, you're going to have to earn those votes. She's not just handing them over to her. Now, I don't know if you heard this part, but this is the epitome of dumb by Donald Trump. There's always been this talk about all these people voting for Nikki Haley and voting against Donald Trump and how many will never vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump got his little ego beat up by that. He got mad that these
Mhm.
people were voting for Nikki Haley. And we know that Donald Trump is known for just burning bridges. He loves burning bridges and doesn't look back. This particular case is going to be a problem and going to be helpful for Joe Biden. Donald Trump, because his ego was hurt, said, I don't want Nikki Haley's people voting for
Yep.
me. I don't need them voting for me. And of course, Joe Biden said, yeah, come over here. You
Yeah.
can come with us and we can beat this guy. It's uh, probably one of the dumbest moves I've ever heard a politician do, but I'm not at all surprised that Donald Trump did it.
I don't know if he forgot that he said that or if he just does like everything else like I said it doesn't matter because I'm saying something different now, but he did when Biden opened the door for the Nikki Haley supporters, so did Trump. he also invited them to join his side as well. So that was pretty interesting because when I saw that he had made a post welcoming them, I was just asking myself, did he not remember that he's already said they're not welcome?
Yeah,
I don't know if he forgot that he said that. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me thinks he forgot he said it.
I'm sure.
Nikki Haley, she wasted her breath on that one.
I'm
Because
sure he
these people
did
were
forget
saying
it.
we will never vote for him. So how are they going to earn the vote? And why would she expect the women who voted for her to vote for someone who kept calling her bird brain and all these other childish names? So I don't understand why she expects for that to happen. You heard what your supporters said. You know they are looking for something different. She said it herself. So I don't know why she even said that. She know how they
Well,
feel about him.
I don't think she did it with the intent that he would take her advice and actually do it. I think she was just kind of needling him a little bit. Yeah, you beat me, but I got a lot of votes that you need, and you don't have them. I'm sure she was just trying to stick it to him to see if he'd go off the deep end and further damage himself. Um, this is a huge problem for Donald Trump. I mean, Joe Biden goes into the primaries, he gets 90, 95%. They're fairly unified behind Joe Biden in spite of the fact that, people complain about him. And then Donald Trump gets 60%. That's a big discrepancy. If
Yeah,
only half the people that didn't vote for him in the primary don't vote for him, he loses. He loses easily. And I just
yeah.
don't think he grasps it. I think he's ready to start saying, well, it was a fake election and I got ripped off again. But by that time, people will be so tired of hearing that shit. It won't make a ripple. Donald Trump will be out the door at that point and people will abandon him because he's of no value to the Republican Party at that point.
I think that is actually what's coming next. I think that once Haley is out and then he starts to amp up his rhetoric, the one thing that he's going to keep pounding and pounding and pounding, he's a one-trick pony. He did the exact same thing in the last election. If they win, it's rigged. If it's rigged, it's them. He's going to continue to say that, just like he did the last time, and that's what led up to January 6th. Mail-in ballots is fraudulent. I think I seen him when he did that Fox town hall. He was saying that, if you vote mail-in ballots, you cheated. Like he's telling them that all over again. So I think he's getting ready to turn the page in the book and it's going to be if they win, they cheated, they rigged it, they this, they that. I think that's next.
But he's a much weaker candidate now than he was in 2020. And that will start sounding like the boy who cried wolf. It's just not going to
Mm.
work a second time. It didn't work the first time.
Yeah.
It's not going to work the second time. Now I've heard some people in the Republican Party say, well, these Nikki Haley voters won't go Democrat because they're Republicans and they wouldn't vote for a Democrat. Well, you could take it the other way. They may not be a Democrat and they're Republicans, but I'm sure these people don't think of themselves as narcissistic, psychopathic, sociopathic, dumb fucks that are trying to overthrow the country. So, which side are they going to align themselves with? They may have to hold their nose to side with Joe Biden, but they're not going to jump on board that fucking crazy train with Donald Trump.
No. And then like when people were the Nikki Haley voters, they made that very clear. I've heard, people ask if Nikki Haley loses, who do you vote for? And people said Biden. Like,
Yeah,
there's people who said, there was an older woman too. She's like, I've lived in a democracy my whole life. I want my grandchildren to live in one. There was another woman who said, I've read Project 2025 and it scares me. And this was like an old white woman who was saying this.
right,
So I do think that they're not listening to people to in their party and what they're saying. They're listening to the loudest voices in the room and ignoring everybody else.
right,
And you tend to notice with like children or just people in general, the ones that are quiet and are off by themselves, those are the ones that you kind of focus on because there's something going on here,
right.
but they're being ignored. The attention that they're asking for and that they're saying they need, it's completely being ignored because MAGA is taking over everything. So I think they keep ignoring these people. They're not earning those people back.
Now,
especially with the he's going to be exposed a lot more now.
oh
People
yeah.
who weren't really paying attention to him, and it's a worse time than ever to be front and center because his mind is like a bunch of marbles rolling around in there.
Yeah, it's he's going off the rails. There's no question, and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Um,
Hmm.
the thing about it is the Republican Party should be recognizing a red flag, and they're
Yeah.
not. Or maybe they recognize it, but they refuse to do anything because they're so aligned with Donald Trump. But the red flag is this:
Hmm.
think about any other presidential election we've ever had where a Republican has come out and say, I can't vote for the Republican. I'm going to have to vote Democratic. That's almost unheard of with Republicans, but we're hearing it now. I mean, Donald Trump
Yeah.
can't even win with just the Republicans. He's got to get the independents, the moderates, and all that stuff. He's pretty much lost them, and now he's losing his own party. I mean, how does this not end up being a fucking landslide?
Right. And it's nonsense because there are things that people care about other than his court dates.
Yeah,
And that's the only thing he talks about. It's all like grievance and anger and bitterness, but he doesn't talk policy. Anytime he says, I'm going to make your life better, by doing that, I'm just going to kick all the brown people out of the country and drill a bunch of oil, and then
yeah,
you're just going to be happy. Like that's the only policy that he has. And there are people with like legitimate fears and concerns. There's college students that, or even adults that's been paying on student loans for their whole lives. They want him to keep nitpicking away at these programs to help them. And
right,
when Trump, if he was to come into office, all of that stops. All of and people like when they look at the infrastructure projects, there's no way he's going to continue any of that. He's going to try to dismantle it just out of pure jealousy and spite. Like everything that Obama did, he single-handedly, that was his whole thing during his administration, undoing everything.
right.
And I do think anything that Biden accomplished, he's going to try to undo it. I don't see him, that would be like the only thing he wants to do is just be pissed off, take it out on immigrants, and just undo everything that Biden did.
Well, he still keeps talking about the border. Joe's not doing anything, and I'll fix it. The unfortunate thing is the one thing that was going to fix the border, or at least start to fix the border, the most stringent bill ever for the border, he stopped it, not Joe Biden. And it's strictly because, I mean, he's such a child that he thinks, I don't want Joe Biden to look good, so I'll just try to make him look bad, even if I'm making myself look bad in the process. And that's pretty much what he's done. And he's too stupid to recognize it's really hurting him more than Joe.
Yeah, I don't I don't know if it's like I don't know how his supporters feel. If it was me, I would feel insulted because he's lying and he thinks that I don't know any better.
Yeah,
And I really like how low does he think of his supporters where he truly believes and maybe they just don't know that he killed the border deal. I think a lot of them they know he killed the border deal, but they don't read, so they don't know what was in the border deal. And sometimes you just have to pay attention to what Trump doesn't say. There was a time when it was like, read the transcripts, read this, read that, do your own research. That was a catchphrase for these people. But when it comes to the border, it wasn't read the deal, see how bad it is because it was good. So I don't think a lot of them read it to know what was in there, but they do know that it's an open Biden border now, that
right,
that open border deal is what he calls it. And he just knows they're ignorant. But there's only a fraction of the country that's like that. What
right.
about the rest of the people who do know better? They're not going to believe what you're saying.
Well, that's one of the
I don't
things.
get them.
That's one of the things I get concerned with Democrats. They hear these things like open borders, or they're mad at Joe because of Israel and all this stuff. And they hear it, it's so loud and it's so continual, they think everybody thinks that. And the fact of the matter is
Mm.
they don't. It's just a Republican strategy to throw this in the narrative and keep it in your face until you think it's real. And it's amazing how many people do think it's real. Um, there was a quote, Elise Stefanik. She is a Republican in the House of Representatives, a big time Trump humper. Wasn't when she first started, but she ultimately became one because She thought it was more expeditious to her career. Anyway, she made a comment and she's trying to hype up Donald Trump for November, right? And she decides she's going to quote Ronald Reagan. So she said, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" Like she's doing something there. I mean, this is the epitome of gaslighting. Are we better off? Yeah. Let's go back four
Yeah.
years. We were in a pandemic. We were shut down. Unprecedented unemployment. People were struggling financially. Businesses were going out of business. The stock market sucked. But now we have the best unemployment in 50 years. The job market is great. Manufacturing is up. The stock market is booming. More people on health care than ever before.
hmm
How are you
I
even
think
stupid
that
enough to say that?
I think the Republican Party is emboldened by their positions, because they feel like since they were voted into office based off of lies and ignorance, that's all you have to do is just be ignorant and tell lies and you can stay in your position.
Right.
So she's just lying because she thinks nobody knows any better, or she thinks that, the bitter hatred that they have is more important than people's own personal lives. And she doesn't read polls either, because if she did, the polls clearly say that most people feel like they personally are doing better. They just feel like the country as a whole isn't. So
Right.
when you ask, are you better off? Most people would say, yeah, I am. But they feel like the country isn't, just because of all of the tension and division that's going on. So she's not even, someone in her position should know the answer to that question before they ask it.
Well, I'm sure she does know the answer to the question. It just goes to how desperate she is to come up with something. It's
Mm,
almost like they're trying to cancel the whole year of 2020. Now, because Joe was elected in 2020, they're trying to blame 2020 on him. But surprise,
yeah,
he didn't become president until January 20th of 2021. It was all
yeah,
Donald Trump in 2020. And they'll say, well, the pandemic, that's why it went so bad for Donald Trump. And I always say, I blame the pandemic on Donald Trump. I mean, the
yeah,
pandemic may have happened, but it wouldn't been anywhere nearly as bad. The lockdowns, everything, it wouldn't have been that bad if we had a president that actually did something, didn't call it a hoax, wasn't negligent, didn't fire the whole committee to handle these pandemics and just let it
yep,
ride. So they say, well, we were short on jobs and the economy sucked, but that's not Donald Trump's fault because it was the pandemic. He made the bad pandemic far worse than it could have been or should have been. And so he has to take responsibility for the state of the country when he left office because he's just as responsible for the pandemic as he is all the other stuff that went to shit.
yeah. We were on the road to a recession before the pandemic. The only thing that the pandemic did that was positive for Trump was cover up how horrible the
Right,
economy in the country was doing, because like all these rich people, all of them had their tax cuts and their tax breaks. They weren't paying taxes. And the deficit was just climbing and climbing and climbing. You're giving away all this money. Like
right,
him and like the rich people in America and these corporations, they were just robbing this country blind.
right.
And there was no money to replace what they were taking. So we were already on a road. And then he was already undoing regulations left and right. So we were already heading to a recession. The only thing that the pandemic did was hide that fact
Right.
from his people who just don't seem to think that he was president for 3 years before COVID. And what did he accomplish? Just take COVID out. What did he do? Besides just give his friends a bunch of money. That's all he did. He didn't
Yeah.
do anything else. And he tried so hard to tear down the Affordable Care Act because he thought that could tear down Obama's legacy somehow. That's all he did. And he did rallies.
Eh,
Like that's all he did for three. And he golfed and ate McDonald's. And that was it for three
Golf,
years. And
golfed
then
and
when a
ate
pandemic
McDonald's.
came, he sat on his butt.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. And the thing about it is that the whole strategy with Republicans is just trying to stain or discredit whoever their opponent is. And from the moment
Mhm.
Joe Biden got into office, the economy was shit. And then it started to
Yeah.
come back. What's the first thing they said? Every financial guy said it. Oh, recession's coming. A recession's coming. And I'm not a financial expert, but I didn't see any signs that a recession was coming. I'm going, I don't know, but I don't see it yet. And they kept, it was almost like wishful thinking. We hope we get a recession so Joe Biden looks bad. But guess what? It didn't fucking happen. In fact, we are flourishing now in terms of an economy in this country, in spite of what Republicans might try to say. You can't lie about the numbers. Then, when Donald Trump left office, we were at about 30,000 in the Dow Jones. We're now going up over
Mm-hmm.
40,000 in 3.5 years. That's fucking crazy. That is a
Yeah.
booming economy, booming stock market anyway. So they just do what they do. They lie and they're trying to stain Joe Biden, and every time they do, it fucking fails.
Right. I don't think I just I don't know. It's just kind of like how does people with that low of like a character and intelligence, how do they get into these positions that they're in? Because they never thought that building the middle class and, working your way up would somehow benefit this country. Like they never thought that. So when they predicted that there would be a recession, they were just counting on trickle down economics or whatever it is that hasn't worked in the past 50 years.
Right.
So they were looking at that and thinking that that's how Biden was going to run the country. And if he would have run the country that way, it would have been a recession. But he didn't. He looked out for the little people. And little people is who grew and built the economy. On that aspect, I really do think that they thought it was going to be a recession and they just wasn't expecting for the middle class to be able to carry the country the way that we have been doing.
Right. They found out they were wrong, and you would hope they'd learn a
Hmm.
lesson from it, but they won't. They will still keep spewing the same shit over and over again. I don't know if you heard this.
Hmm.
We know that Hunter Biden went into a closed door deposition or a hearing or
Yeah.
whatever, and he embarrassed the piss out of him. You would think at this point you
Hmm.
find out that their star witness is an agent for Russia and he's lying, that Hunter Biden embarrasses them behind closed doors because the Democrats come out and say what happened. They're so
Hmm.
stupid. They're so stupid. They have now invited Hunter Biden to come back in to do a public hearing, what we can watch on TV. It wasn't bad enough that he embarrassed them behind closed doors. They think he's this addle-brained drug addict that's going to come in. But Hunter Biden's actually pretty smart. He is, in fact, a lawyer. He's passed a bar. He's held some great positions. He's done some things.
Hmm.
Yes, he had a drug problem and he went to shit and he was kind of a fuck up for a while. But now that he's not doing the drugs, he's still a smart guy. I can't imagine what they think they're going to accomplish by having him in public. If I'm Hunter Biden, I say, fuck yeah, let's do this. I'm going to embarrass all you motherfuckers. So that's what they want to do. That's how desperate they are to get something on Joe Biden. Even though everything they try fails, they're still going to do something stupid again.
They're narrow-minded when it comes to just people in general.
Yeah.
They look at Hunter Biden as just like a drug addict, right? Which
Yeah.
is I don't it has such a negative stigma to it, but people can rebuild their lives. But anyway, they just look at him as he's a drug addict. Like he just came out of the womb and he was just a problem child, a drug addict, and he's been getting favors from his father his whole life. They look at him the way that Trump is.
Yeah.
But they don't realize, like, when he went to school, they don't think about the boards that he sat on. They don't think about the lobbying that he did. They don't think about any of that. They just literally see a drug addict when they see him, which is just is so narrow-minded. But I say just bring it on if you want to. And I think their motive is just a pure distraction at this point. I think whatever they can do to just get a distraction, that's what they're going to do. And they think that Hunter Biden is a good distraction for them. So they're just going to roll with it until they can find another punching bag. I guess that's what bullies do.
Yeah. Well, I think if they're looking for distractions to cover up for crazy shit that Donald Trump might say or do, they're going to have a problem with that. They're going to have to come up with something every day. I found it interesting that we have all these people claiming that young people don't like Joe Biden because of his stance with Israel. Now, what
Mm.
he's trying to do with Israel is what an ally would do. Plus, he's also trying to get supplies into the people in Gaza. He's trying to get a ceasefire. He has had a couple of ceasefires that he's been responsible for. And in Minnesota, in the primary, we had 19% vote uncommitted. And my question to these people is, you're voting to make a point. I understand that. But when it comes down to it, are you going to vote for Joe Biden because you're angry about something he is or isn't doing? And then are you going to turn to Donald Trump because you think he's going to do something better? Donald Trump finally committed to this Israel thing. And he said he
Yeah.
strongly supported Israel and that Israel had to deal with being attacked and they had to do what they had to do. So if you're one of these uncommitted mad at Joe Biden, you're going to vote for Donald Trump. He's also supporting Israel, except he wants to get vicious about it. I don't understand what they're trying to do. I think all they're trying to do is scare Joe Biden, which isn't working, to get him to abide by what they want. It's not going to work that way. But this whole uncommitted thing as a protest, I think, is a complete fucking waste because they're not going to vote for Donald Trump. I don't care what they say or what they're trying to threaten. I get tired of seeing it. I think at this point, we just need to get through this election, get Joe Biden elected. And then when things are starting to get back to normal, maybe we can start to fix things. Right now, the big problem is keep Donald Trump out of the fucking presidency.
Yeah, what's her name? The Palestinian in Congress. I can't think of her name. What is her
T-
name?
Talib.
Yes, Talib. So she came out, I think it was a few days ago, where she was just saying how fearful she was of a second Trump term. And so, a lot of people are just like, well, why are you doing this uncommitted thing? And I really do think that it's just a protest vote, kind of like a way to kind of like have their feelings and their voice heard. And then at the same time, put pressure on Biden. Um, but that can kind of backfire as well because right now he's listening, he's paying attention. But if you have this list of demands that there's no way he can have that list of
No.
demands met. I can see his campaign telling him, you know what, we're not going to win the votes over here. So we need to focus on this group and that group. So if they continue to push the way that they're pushing, I think that it's going to have the opposite effect of what they think it's going to affect. So I understand what they're doing, and it's just like, okay, make your voice heard. But if you're that afraid of Trump being back into the White House, you can just say, okay, we made our point, our voices have been heard. When 2025 comes, then we need to amp the pressure, or we need to do whatever.
Right.
But if they continue to make it so hard, I could see we don't have energy to keep investing over here. We need to focus on another group that we can win over. I think that could happen.
Well, they're um, dealing with political games, which under any
Hmm.
circumstance, any other circumstance, it would be fine. But we have a bigger issue, the the gorilla in the room, if you will, and that is it's about democracy. We either going to have
Yeah,
it or we're not. So whether you like Joe Biden or not at this point, he's for democracy. Donald Trump is against it. That's the only decision we really need to make right at this point. All this other
I agree.
stuff to deal with the political games that they play, let's wait till after the 2024 election. Just let's save the country first, and then we'll try to accessorize it. That I know that's putting that in simplistic terms, but that's how I look at things. What's the big problem? Deal with that, and then once we've got that behind us, then we can deal with the other things that we need to fix.
Yeah, you pretty much just said what Fetterman said. But he got attacked for it. He just pretty much said, everybody who like all the Democrats who are have something negative to say about Biden and they want to complain about this, they want to complain about that. He was just like, just like shut up. I think the way he said it, it rubbed people the wrong way. But I think what he was trying to say is there's a time and a place for everything,
Right.
and now is not the time for a bunch of Democrats to be complaining about Joe Biden. He said that, and then a lot of like far left progressives were saying that he sounds like Trump. Like, you just need to be all about Biden. You're not able to have a voice or an opinion or whatever. And that's not what he was saying. What he was saying is we need to be strong. We need to be united right now.
Right.
Once we get through this, then you can complain and push and do everything else. But it's not the time to do that right now. He got a lot of heat for that, but I understood where he was coming from. He just basically said what you just said, and he was kind of rude when he said it. But
Well,
he's just that kind of guy. I don't see him sugarcoating anything like that.
no, he's kind of blunt and in your face. I tried
Hmm.
to explain it to somebody one time. I said, look, if your house is burning and your kitchen floor is dirty,
Yeah,
you don't try to put the fire out and clean the kitchen floor. You wait to put
right.
the fire out to make sure you have a fucking kitchen floor. Because if you don't put
Hmm.
the fire out, you won't. You got to deal
Right.
with the biggest problem at hand, the thing that's most dangerous, and you got to focus on that to get it done. And then we can worry about the other things. I know this issue for people regarding Israel and Hamas is a big deal, and it's
Yeah.
sad and it's horrible. But it's kind of like when you're in an airplane, and they say,
Hmm.
now, if you have to, the air masks come down out of the ceiling, right? And if you have a child, put yours on first and then put
Yeah.
your child's on. And the reason that is, they say that is because if you don't put yours on first, you're of no help to that child. And the same thing
Hmm.
applies here. If we don't protect democracy and get that done without having all these political games, it may be a moot point. We won't have democracy
Yeah.
if we keep fucking around.
Yeah. And I think that is the internet is like a gift and a curse in a sort of way.
Yeah.
And that would be the curse side of it. Everyone is an expert. Everyone knows how to fix the problem. Everybody knows this and that. And it's like facts are obsolete when everybody thinks they're an expert in everything. And then in this particular instance, it it doesn't feel like it's not wrong that you have an opinion or that you feel that way. It's just it's not the time. You got to prioritize. There is no one to fight for Palestinians if Trump is in office. So how do you make sure that people are doing airdrops, making sure they're getting food, pushing for a two-party solution, pushing for a ceasefire? You
Yeah.
have to make sure that the person that's going to do that is in office to keep pushing.
Right.
The alternative is to put someone in office who's not going to push, who's going to be like, "Hey, Israel, do your thing. We good." So I don't get that part about it, but at the same time, it's not like something that's close to my heart. Like if I was from another country and that was going on and I still had family members there and I was concerned and worried, that would be my priority as well. So I get where they're coming from, but at the same time, when you look at the big picture, you want somebody there who can push. And right now, the only person is there is Biden. So it's kind of like you have to bite your tongue a little bit and make sure he's still there to continue to work past the election.
Well, you're right about the internet in the sense that there's always another expert that comes out. Unfortunately, they're not really all experts. Some of them aren't even
Mhm.
telling the truth. So you have to have enough wherewithal to be able to dig a little deeper to kind of check people's works. I mean, people will say, well, what are you talking about? You're coming out here being an expert. I'm not an expert. Fact is, I came on TikTok like anybody else, wanting to be a thirst trap and lip syncing and being a fucking snack, and it didn't fucking work. So I started talking, and they go, that that hunk of beefcake's got a brain. I'm going to listen to him. So I just went that way. It was more effective.
Not the thirst trap.
No, it didn't work. Did not work. And I was pretty sure it was going to. And apparently, apparently there is not a big market for a 63-year-old balding, not in the best shape guys. Apparently, that's not a hot thing on the market. So we talk
It
politics
depends
instead.
though. Like it depends how deep is your pockets. Because
Well,
these
that's
girls on TikTok don't play.
not deep enough, I can tell you that. And frankly, even if that did work, my wife frowns on me dating outside the marriage, so we don't do that. Anyway, um, Old Soul, we'll take a quick break, and we've got much more to talk about. So hopefully everybody will stick with us. But we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. It's Thursday. Old Soul is here. We've got a robust conversation going on, and there's plenty of other things to talk about. You and I, Old Soul, were talking about this whole Georgia thing. You know, they're
Mhm.
looking at trying to disqualify Fonnie Willis from the case. I don't think to date they've shown any evidence that would cause her to be disqualified. Um, but it's interesting that we've even had this hearing at all. And in talking to you prior to the show or prior to the break, you have some insights as to why we're going through this fucking circus at all. So please tell us.
Did you notice the defense attorney, the female? I can't. I didn't. It's not that I forgot her name. I just didn't care to learn it. Just to be
Right,
honest.
right.
But she was slated to testify in DC.
She
I think she
did.
might have tested. Okay, yeah.
She did.
But
She didn't come
so
off too well.
of course she did it. They scrape at the bottom of the barrels with attorneys here.
Yeah, no shit.
Um, I've read and I just now realized that Judge McAfee in Georgia, he's actually up for reelection. And so when everyone was like, he seems like even though he's young, he knows what he's doing. Like if you see it the way he was running his courtroom in the beginning,
Right, right.
and then out of nowhere, he allowed this circus to happen in his courtroom. Come to find out, he's up for reelection this year, and then he
Wow.
pushed his decision until after the ballots were already printed with the names on there.
Wow.
And so I think that's why. And then you have to remember he is Federalist Society. I don't know why I can't say that word, but it makes sense as to why he allowed for this to happen. It makes sense as to why he's delaying his judgment as well. He just wants to make sure that his seat is secure before he handles business. That's all.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs that these people would look at their own publicity
Yep.
before actually doing the job and slowing down this whole process, putting us in a situation where we might be going to vote on somebody who may very well be a convicted felon. I mean that is
Hmm.
that's a disgrace, really. And the idea, McAfee, when I first saw him, I thought, okay, here's a sharp young guy. He seems to be
Hmm.
um, handling the case okay. But apparently, when it comes to getting votes, that
Yep.
apparently is the priority. That's what he
Yeah.
needs to do, and it's a sad commentary.
Yeah, I did like him when he first came out, the way he was handling his courtroom, and I was just kind of impressed with him being as young as he was, and I really wasn't worried about it. And then all of a sudden, he just kind of like switched, and I was like, "Where's this coming from?" So then when I read that, I was just like, "Oh, it's political," and I don't know why it bothered me. But well, I do know why. It's because he's a judge. This is a criminal RICO charge for a dangerous rogue ex-president who is going around wreaking havoc all over this country, threatening people in your courtroom, your witnesses, the jury that's going to be there, trying to poison the jury pool, and you're worried about being reelected. So you're right that it is such a disgrace, but I mean, at this point, I don't know what else to expect from these judges.
Well,
I'm hoping that after his name is printed on a ballot and he's feeling secure, that he goes back to being professional with the courtroom and not allowing these antics and circus to continue to happen.
Well, the thing is I would have to believe that he's not going to disqualify Fonnie Willis. The bar is pretty high on doing that, and there's been no evidence of
Mhm,
it. So I assume that he will not disqualify her. I have to believe that while the trial's going on, that would be good publicity for him too, unless Fonnie
mhm.
Willis wins and he's a Republican and he's with the Federalist Society. Um, does him presiding over a case that goes to the dirty Democrats? I wonder if that hurts him in his election plans, reelection plans.
I don't know, but I do know that now, realizing that he is running for reelection, it kind of makes me look at it a little different. I think I'll be noticing things that maybe I wouldn't have noticed if I wouldn't have read the article. And I'm just like, okay, well, now I just have to pay more attention. But I am hoping that he'll go back to a more stable environment in his courtroom once those ballots are printed. That's what I'm thinking.
How long do you think it's going to be before we get a final decision? I mean, we've dicked around with this enough. We've embarrassed enough people. We've even embarrassed the defense attorney because she went before Congress and they made her look foolish, as to what she was trying to accuse and charge Fonnie Willis with, and she really had
Mhm.
no explanation for it. She looked pretty stupid for a lawyer. Um, what kind
I
of
don't
time
know what
frame?
made them think, I don't know what made them think that bringing her there would she would like somehow open the door to where they can get the evidence that Fonnie Willis has on Trump. She's
Right?
made it very clear she's not giving them that evidence. So try as they might, they're not going to get it.
Yeah,
All of this extra stuff that they're doing is all for naught. Just worry about the budget. Just do something productive with your time. You only got a few months left. Just do something.
yeah, exactly. Well, I think this whole thing is like everything else the Republicans are doing. They're doubling down and they're trying anything
Mhm,
just to cause confusion and chaos. You know, who knows what the next claim is going to be? I mean, Donald Trump is trying to delay paying his money, and we'll talk about that later. They just come out of their asses with crazy shit just to create chaos. One of the things I've been most disturbed by since Joe Biden's got in office, and we've seen all these things with Donald Trump and the Republicans, our judicial system generally is in a fucking shambles. It really is. And I think
mhm,
people's trust in our judicial system, especially the Supreme Court, is at an all-time low. Now, that's not to say there aren't good judges like Chutkin and Kaplan up in New York and Engeron and people. There are good judges, but there's enough bad
mhm.
judges in the courts to really affect the whole image of the judicial system. I'm very frustrated by that until people start being held accountable and being judged properly and being punished for serious crimes that they commit.
Yeah, I've always kind of just from my lived experiences, I know that the judicial system can be very powerful, and it could be used very powerfully the right way or the wrong way. And a lot of the experiences that I've seen is the wrong way. I've it's just if you have enough money, you can get away with crimes, murder, theft, anything. If you have enough money, you can get off with it. I mean, look at OJ.
Yeah,
So I've always noticed that just from my point, my advantage is in our where I'm from, they always say if you don't have a paid lawyer, don't go to trial because the only
yeah.
thing you're gonna do is end up worse. You know what I mean? Just make your deals, do what you gotta do, but there's absolutely no reason to go to trial. And then there's certain judges with biases, even in family court. You may have a judge that's sitting on a bench and his cases are lopsided and he always give custody to the guy or always giving custody to the mother, you know? They
Right.
have their own biases. It's not a fair system at all. It just depends on how much money you have.
Well,
And I've always seen it that way.
yeah, you make a good point and a great distinction. When I said I have no trust in the judicial system and it is in a shambles, it goes both
Mhm.
ways. the court system is very decisive and very, very tough if you don't have money or if you happen to be of color. Uh, but
Mhm.
at the same time, like you say, if you've got money, if you've got fame, if you've got power or clout, somehow you can slip through the cracks and get away from shit. And both
Yeah.
those things are a perfect example of how bad the judicial system is. It's not fair for
Mhm.
everybody. Don't tell me no one's above the law, because clearly there are plenty of people above the law. And I mean, we talk about Donald Trump's really upset about this Letitia James lawsuit, and he's gotten busted for all kinds of criminal activity. Now there's a big
Yeah.
hubbub in New York of other people that are in real estate development going, "Oh, I'm getting out of here. They're going to come after us, and this is a bad precedent." And the thing is, everything Donald Trump did was illegal. So what these
Yeah.
other developers are saying, we do shit illegal all the time, and now they're going to call us out on it. Now they're going to make us accountable for it. So we're getting out of here.
Mhm.
For how many decades have people like Trump been able to do the things he's done and just get away with it because they got money? That's fucking appalling.
Yeah, and then one thing Trump has shown us is you don't even have to be wealthy. Just as long as you appear wealthy on paper,
Right.
you get treated different. If you just add an extra zero and a comma, and the whole world is different for you.
Right.
And I think that's something a lot of people they just don't realize. And to think that Trump is being treated horribly by the justice system, please.
He,
He
he,
gets more grace than anyone that I've ever seen. Is it's insane. The fact that he's never been just one night overnight in a jail cell is beyond me. It's
yeah.
beyond me. You can threaten a judge, the prosecutor, witnesses, court staff, the public, and you can just get away with it. It's insane to me. It's
I think
insane.
I think it's going to be a little different when he's in criminal court. Part of it is that he's required to be there every day, and his ADHD personality and his drug use and his just normal shitty personality. He's going to have a tough time sitting there all day, every day, listening to shit without opening up his mouth. If you're in a
Yeah,
civil case and you do what he did, they deal mostly with money as punishment. So all they could do, or all they were willing to do, is fine him. But if you're in a criminal case and you have a judge like Juan Marchand in the Manhattan district and you start acting up like that, the first stop is jail. And I don't think he'll think
mhm,
twice about doing it. He's not going to let this guy act up in front of a jury. And he's just going to put him away until the motherfucker shuts up. So maybe in the criminal trials, the one coming up on March 25th, we'll see how Donald Trump behaves. And we know within a short period of time, he's going to lose his shit because he's going to realize he's in trouble. But maybe at that point, he will have at least a short stint in jail.
yeah. I think that it is time that they start having a serious conversation with him about giving him the drugs that he wants versus giving him the drugs that he needs.
Right.
Because he's going to need something to help him sit still and get through the day. And the stuff that he's taking right now, that's not going to help. That's just going to make him more wired up, more antsy. Um, Either that or he'll be falling asleep. Or I don't know if he's taking downers or if he's just up, 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 up. And his body is trying to like it needs to rest and for his mind is not allowing his body to rest. So I don't know if that's what has him sweaty, droopy, draggy, slurring, and I don't know, but I do know they need to change that medication because maybe he's still hooked on some of that stuff at the pill mill that was going on in the White House. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No shit. The thing is the nature of his personality, the narcissistic personality, they're in their head constantly. They're in their own heads
Mhm.
constantly, trying to impress, trying to cover up, trying to cover lies and all this stuff. That's the one thing about a narcissist. If you could go in their brain, it's a fucking mess because it's always moving. And when you're 78 years old, that's going to take its toll. And we're
Yeah.
seeing it now with his slurring. And that you bring up a good point. This slurring and this confusion on stage Is it dementia or is it drugs? Now, he claims he doesn't take any drugs, but we know that's bullshit. Or is it a combination of both? I mean, because he's
Yeah,
been doing drugs all along. Something's different now because he can't say certain words. I mean, clearly he is diminished somehow. And it's not going to get better because the pressure is going to get only more severe.
yeah, I think that he does have some extensive cognitive decline going on up there.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think that the whatever he's taking, the Adderall, whatever he's taking, it's just exasperating his issue that he's already having. It's not helping. He needs medication to help him instead of enable him in his issues that he has.
Right.
Um, I don't think anybody's having that conversation with him yet, but you could be right. Once he goes to an actual criminal trial, maybe that will change. We'll see. I don't
Well,
know. Because
well,
Trump, he has to see, like, he has to experience it to learn. He doesn't learn from other people, he doesn't learn from words or warnings or anything like that. He has to experience it. So maybe he'll experience some jail time and get it together, but I doubt it.
well, he may be coming on a breaking point here, like in a day or two, um, because we know that by the weekend he has to come up with the $83.3 million or $89 million, whatever it is, with interest and all that stuff. He's got to come up with it this weekend, or maybe even
I thought it
before.
was due today.
Maybe it is today. Maybe it is
I
today.
did. I was just like, oh, what's he gonna do now?
But he's made some motions to delay it, and the judge hasn't ruled on it, and he will rule on it, and he's not going to give Donald Trump a delay. The laws in New York are pretty specific. Um, but when he gets to that point where he either has to come up with the money, assuming he does, and has to come out of his pocket, that's problematic for him. He will hate that, regardless of how he gets the money. Or if he can't get the money, then E. Jean Carroll's lawyer can go to the court and say, okay, now we need to start seizing shit. That's going to be a real eye opener for him. Finally, he's got something that's going to happen to him that he can't divert, distract, or delay. And it's happening now. And that could be a breaking point for Donald Trump.
Yeah, do you remember, like, I don't know if it was like a month or so ago when the verdict, well, it would have been just like a month ago when that verdict first came down, and I said I'm pushing for Elon Musk to loan Trump the money. How
Yeah.
do you think that one-on-one went? Like, when I read that he was having a private meeting with Elon Musk, I was like, I called it.
Well,
I knew he was gonna call him.
yeah, you knew he was going to
How do you think
call.
the private meeting?
And Donald Trump said some nasty shit about Elon Musk too over the years, like
He
he's
said
done.
nasty stuff about everybody.
Yeah. But now he's talking to Elon Musk. Now, the only possible reason why Elon Musk would give him money, and he probably can afford it, but it would be pissing it away because the only possible reason he would want to do that is that if he becomes president, now Elon Musk owns the president, which is valuable to Elon Musk. But Elon Musk is
Mhm.
alleged to be a smart guy. He's got to be able to see the writing on the wall, realizes that Donald Trump isn't going to be the president. Maybe he's stupid enough to think he is. But if he understands what's going on and sees that Donald Trump will not be the president, what possible reason could Elon Musk have for giving him money? Because he knows he's never getting it back. Like I say, he's going to piss it away. Donald Trump will be in jail or broke, and whatever Elon Musk gives him, he ain't getting it back, and he's not getting anything for it.
Elon Musk is kind of like, he's like the ultimate lib troll, and
Yeah,
he just wants to own the lib so bad. I think the last time I saw it, his net worth was estimated at like 200 million. I think Jeff
billion.
Bezos was right on. Yeah, Jeff Bezos was right under him at 198. And then the Facebook guy Zuckerberg was at like 197 point something or whatever.
Right, right.
197 point something $1 million. So Elon Musk, he has the money to spare. And I'm thinking that if he gave Trump the money because he has so much money, like that doesn't a $500 million doesn't affect him one way or the other. I think in his mind, it'll be like, oh, that's the ultimate lib troll type thing. You know what I mean? Like maybe he'll just do it for S's and giggles or something, you know? So I think maybe if he does give it to him, that might be the reason behind it, just to own the libs for $500 million, I guess.
Wow.
I've never had that kind of money to even consider it,
No,
but
no,
I know he can afford it.
he can afford it, but if he has any business acumen, he's going to want something for it other than owning the
Mhm,
libs. I mean, but at the same time, he's not a really, as much as he's very wealthy. I don't know how he is considered a smart businessman. He took Twitter, bought it for $44 million, and within a month, he lost $20 million, $20 billion. That's not a smart businessman, and he's not
right,
doing any better with what he calls X now. It's tanking. Nobody I know goes over there anymore. It's just like a bigger Truth Social, and it's a fucking joke. And Tesla is tanking. Um, Part of the thing is that I know that Elon Musk does not like Joe Biden, and part of that reason is they had a big summit with all electric vehicle people. They didn't invite
hmm.
they didn't invite Elon Musk, so I'm sure he's pissed about being snubbed.
I wouldn't invite him either.
No,
Not after the way he's acting with our satellites. I wouldn't invite him either. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's just like, no, we're not doing that with you. And then, but the one thing about Elon Musk too is he was a big DeSantis supporter. So
right,
that could have something to do with it as well. And then, I know a lot of these people, they say certain things about Trump in public and they feel completely different in private. So that could be another reason too, where it makes it seem like he's all cool for Trump and MAGA and right wing, and then behind closed doors, he cannot stand Trump or his people. So that could be another contributing factor as well. But I know that he had a meeting with a bunch of wealthy Republican donors. And then after that meeting, he called for a private meeting with Musk, which means
right.
those other donors, they weren't here for it. They were like, nope, we're not trying to do that. And maybe Trump feels like there's a screw in Elon that he could kind of twist a little bit and get what he wants. It could go either way
It
with him,
could.
but we'll have to see.
Well, the thing is, he's got a lot of buckets to fill. He's got to
Hmm.
continue paying for his legal defense, which is a lot. He's got to
Hmm.
mount some kind of campaign, which he doesn't have much money for. And then he's got ultimately, in the end, $600 million that he's got to come and put up and put in escrow and just sit there. He's
Yep.
in kind of an insurmountable situation. I mean, even for a guy who's a billionaire, whatever he says he has, to come up with $600 million or more, um, he doesn't have the money. People in his business don't have big chunks of cash. Every bit of
Hmm.
cash they have is in properties, and they're usually leveraged too. So, who's to say he's even got enough property with enough equity to even cover that $600 million if he was to get a bond? It's just,
Yeah. You know what you just said? It reminds me, what my grandmother used to say. Oh, you got a whole lot of buckets to fill, and all of them got holes in it.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
I, 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 I didn't even think Trump owned all of Trump Tower. I thought that he owned the retail and commercial, and then like one penthouse that he owns, and then the rest of them belong to, I think it's like a German company or something like that. So he doesn't even own all of Trump Tower. So I don't know like how much money he has at all. I don't it's going to be interesting to watch how this plays out. And even the 100 million that he offered up, it was kind of like, well, we could possibly get this together. So that wasn't even all guaranteed either.
Right.
So
But clearly,
I don't know.
clearly he's having trouble getting a bond, which makes sense. Who's going to give him credit? But he's to the
Hmm.
point where he's begging. He's going to donors who have walked away from him
Yeah.
pretty much. He's going to Elon Musk. He's begging. He's going to the judges and begging for a little extra time. Like that's going to make a difference. Uh, well, you got to find on this particular thing about why I want a whole new trial. it was funny. They said we should have a whole new trial because you screwed this up and you screwed that up. But that's what an appeal is for. And of course, with
Right.
the appeal, you got to come up with the money first. Sorry, Donnie, you don't just get a do over. That's not going to happen in New York or any other place. But he's in desperation mode now. He's literally down to begging, and nobody in the courts is bending for him. He isn't going to get extra time. They're on to his game about keep pushing back the goalpost until it never happens. That's not going to happen with this judge in New York. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and he's already trying to um, prepare his supporters for it because I recently seen Alina Habba giving an interview on Newsmax actually. And this was, I think they're trying this one out. Like, yes, he has the money, he can afford it, but he shouldn't have to pay it out because blah, 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 blah. So I heard her saying that on Newsmax, and I was like, oh, here comes the next talking point. He's not broke. He has the money, but he should not have to spend that money because it's political. It's a hit job. It's a witch hunt. It's election interference. So I think that's going to be the next talking point. And I do think his supporters will fall for that even though they're donating to his GoFundMe.
Yeah. Well,
I do think they're gonna fall for it.
he's going to do that. He's going to say, "I got all the money in the world, but I'm not going to pay it on principle."
Mhm.
Unfortunately, then they start seizing your shit. So
Yeah.
you don't win
Wait,
either way.
how do you think the Republican, like seriously, like how do they feel that he's going around to their donors who could be donating to the RNC, who could be helping with the other races, but Trump is going to these people begging for money for his legal defense fund? And then I don't even, would they consider putting Laura Trump ahead of the RNC with this going on too?
Well, we know the RNC only has
Oh
$8
no.
million in its coffers, so they aren't much good to him.
For now.
And I know the Republicans are starting to freak out, thinking that Donald Trump is going to bankrupt the entire Republican Party on a federal level, which is
Hmm.
what which is what he'll do. He'll burn every bridge, bankrupt everybody else just to save himself. Unfortunately, the Republicans are having a big problem with fundraising generally. It isn't like
Hmm.
they got 200 million sitting in a fucking bank account that Donald Trump can take. They don't have the money. The Republican, and that's the other thing about the election. Everybody says, well, Don might win. Donald Trump and the Republicans are having a serious problem getting money. They're going broke in the individual states. The RNC has $8 million. If that isn't a signal as to how the election is going to go, I don't know what the fuck is. You can take
Yeah.
polls all day long, but if the Republican Party is broke, there's a good reason for it because they don't have support.
Yeah. And I mean, they put incompetent people in positions that they should not have been in. And it's not that they were just incompetent, they didn't know, because sometimes you can learn as you go along, but they put a bunch of grifters there.
Right.
So they money just starts disappearing. We don't know where it went. We don't know how it is. It was like that when I found it. So
The dog ate it. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what happened. It was $100 million yesterday.
And now it's
I think,
gone.
yeah, they're just stealing from each other. They're not stealing from the DNC. They're not stealing from Democrats. They're stealing from each other. Your own party. This is gonna keep your party strong, and everybody is sticking their hand in a cookie jar.
Well, they should have learned a lesson in 2020 when Donald Trump raised all this money. And it was
Hmm.
presumed he would give some money to other candidates to help them win their races. Of course, he didn't. You and I could have
Right.
told him that was going to happen, but the Republicans thought otherwise. He sucked up every penny of the money for himself, either to line his pockets or for his campaign. And now his well has run dry. And now he's going to try to run the Republicans or the RNC's well dry. And they have the problem where they're not getting the fundraising they need. So, you know, what he's doing is the end game for most people like Donald Trump. You borrow from Peter, you steal from Peter to pay Paul, and you go back and forth
Hmm.
and you juggle until it becomes insurmountable. Then you fucking crash. The Republican Party and Donald Trump is just minutes away from crashing. They can't continue to do anything. They can't put on a convention and they can't put on an election if they don't have any money. And Donald Trump's fixing to take what little they have.
Yeah, and I don't know how they didn't see this coming because even when he endorsed candidates and he would have like Herschel Walker, you know, that little tiny print at the bottom for every dollar that you donate, Trump gets like 80 cents.
Yeah,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right, right.
So it's kind of like it wasn't hidden. He didn't sneak and do it. He did it in the open. He, he was like he was somebody that will come into your house and rob you and don't wear a mask. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you can see me, you can identify me, now do something about it.
yeah.
Like he is that much of a thug that he just does not care. And they saw it and they had an opportunity to stop it a few times and they didn't. And then, I mean, this is just what happens when you let that cart go off the rails, I guess.
So we got Donald Trump smashing and grabbing all the way to the nomination. Oh, the Republicans should be so fucking proud, huh? And they're just standing
Smashing,
there.
grabbing, and selling tennis shoes
Yeah.
and knockoff purses at a charity event in Mar-a-Lago the other day.
And all the way going, oh, the black people are really gonna love me for this. I'm just as thuggish as they are. It's just a dumb motherfucker. I mean, he can't help.
I don't know. I don't know any black person with 91 felony indictments. I don't know him.
No. And you've known
Trump
some.
is a whole new level of thug.
Well, you've told us before. You've known some people that have been in the system that maybe weren't the finest people and
Yeah,
ended up doing jail time. Of all those people, has any of them had anywhere close to 91 felony charges?
nope. And if they did, I wouldn't know him. I'd act like I didn't know him. I don't
Yeah.
associate with people with 91 counts. It's it's actually a joke in my family going on right now. Like, how many people am I going to recognize when I go to prison? I'm like, we'll see.
It's going to be like a reunion up in there. I hope maybe you ought to bring some potato salad. Bring grandma's potato salad. That might go over well at the reunion. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't see too many people and hopefully they keep you in a safe situation. I mean, I'm an old white guy and I'm not going to walk into a jail and talk to a bunch of young guys that are in prison because they're going to look at me going, who the fuck are you? I mean, you have the benefit of being a woman and being very articulate. So hopefully they'll want to listen. But my wife was a teacher for 30 years in elementary school. And toward the end, you couldn't even keep their attention. They're fucking doing crazy shit. So hopefully everything goes smoothly for you. And I give you credit for doing it because I'm not that good a person. I wouldn't do it, but
if
you're old
if
soul.
there's a
So,
block of people out there that's not voting and they're all congregated together, they're like sitting ducks in my head. Like, I got you.
and this is coming from the girl who's not even on social media. It seems kind of
Mm-mm.
like a contradiction there. There was one thing you wanted to talk about, and I think it's important to talk about. It's not Trump. It's about the Senate because we know how important it is for Democrats to control the Senate after the November election. Now we know in
Yeah.
Arizona, Kristen Sinema, she dropped out of the race. She was an independent now, and I think she saw the writing on the wall that she had no chance at all. Republicans like her, but they are
Hi, Felicia.
bye, Felicia. Yeah, exactly. So she drops out. Now, the Democratic nominee is Ruben Gallegos. He is a member of the
Mhm.
House. He's actually a real Democrat. He'll be a great senator when he is elected. And I feel confident he's going to be elected because you know who he's running against, right?
Carrie Lake.
Carrie Lake,
Oh,
probably
dang.
the second weakest political candidate in the country. I mean, she's fucking around. She's getting sued. She's got all kinds of other problems in addition to running for the Senate. She couldn't win the governorship. She's not going to win the Senate. She's going to implode too. Apparently, she's let
Yeah,
go of the idea of being VP for Donald Trump, so she's going to try to win the Senate. Um, but that's what's good about this situation is as long as Christian Cinema was in the seat as a Democrat, she really wasn't a an ally of the Democrats. She was more an ally of the Republicans. So by getting her out and putting Ray Ruben Guy Agos in, it's almost like gaining a seat because we'll have a real Democrat that does real things in there as opposed to that goofball Christian Cinema. So I'm looking forward to that.
hmm,
But there was some shit going on in California too. And you had some insights
yeah.
on that regarding Adam Schiff and some of the things going on with that Senate seat. And that primary got to be a little contentious, it sounded like. So please explain.
It did. Christian Cinema, you know what? She was either siding with the Republicans or she was sitting there like a bump on a pickle.
Yeah.
So I'm just so happy that she's gone because she was just useless to the Democratic Party.
Yeah, she
So
is.
I'm happy she's gone. But okay, so in California, because of the way the ballots are set up, I forgot the name of it, but it could be two Democrats going head to head. It could be a Democrat and a Republican, whatever. So Adam Schiff did not want to run against Katie Porter. He wants to run against Garvey. And
Right.
so Garvey didn't have that much money to run a campaign. He just didn't. He only spent like $1 million around for his campaign. But Adam Schiff gave like $11 million for Garvey's campaign. And
What the fuck?
the reason he did that is because he didn't want to run against Katie Porter. So of
Wow.
course Katie Porter is like pissed off. Garvey only spent $1 million. Adam Schiff spent 11 million for Garvey. And
So,
so she's pissed and I understand why she's pissed. And here's my conflict. That was really sneaky. It was underhanded. Money shouldn't be in politics. That was jacked up what he did. And the first thing I thought was Trump, Adam Shifty Shift, like, oh,
right,
that was actually a nickname that actually was true. However, he is going to be in the Senate and he's going to be dealing with some hardcore Republicans who pull these kind of like underhanded tricks and stunts all the time. So you need somebody who can get in there with them and do this type of stuff.
right.
And it's kind of nice to see that he has it in them. But then on the other hand, it's kind of like, oh, that was pretty jacked up what he did. You know what I
So,
mean?
so you bring something to light here I did not know. It sounds like the primary in California, it isn't Republican and Democrat. It's who's ever the top two
Right.
candidates.
Hmm.
And then they
Hmm.
face off. They could be two Democrats, they could be two Republicans, or they could be a
Hmm.
Republican and a Democrat. And
Right.
so Adam Schiff, he seemed like the heir apparent because Nancy Pelosi and other people wanted him to get that job. And then Katie Porter steps up and she's formidable
Yeah. Who
and
do you?
she gets in the race.
Hmm.
And so you're saying that when Katie Porter was getting some steam, Steve Garvey, who's just a fucking baseball player, that's all we need is another
Yeah.
celebrity in the fucking Senate or in any political seat. He's a goofball. He's a Trump humper. If you watched him in the debate, he made a fool out of himself. Uh,
Hmm.
I can see why
Well, my
Schiff.
grandmother said he was going nowhere fast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and maybe Schiff feels like he's an easy opponent, and that's why he wanted him
Yeah.
there. But I
Hmm.
hate I hate to see Katie Porter get shit on like that, and I'd hate to be the one to
Yeah.
piss off Katie Porter because she will fuck some people up. She's smart.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just as happy to see her staying in the house as long as she can, because we don't need somebody like her on the sidelines. But that is kind of bullshit. And it kind of goes to what I've said before. The last 6 or 7 years, the impression is the Republicans are shit and crooks and the Democrats are not. Now, prior to
Mhm.
2015, that wasn't the attitude. The Democrats are just as shifty and shaky and sketchy as the Republicans. It's just now with the
Yeah.
insurgence of Donald Trump, they've gone over the fucking cliff. So they're real bad and they make even the worst Democrats look good. So, yeah, that's kind of a shitty thing. Um, I think the
What
fix
do
was
you think
in.
about it though? Like, are you, because I just I feel split with that. I really do because I understand you have to have that kind of like cutthroatness about yourself when you're
Yeah.
dealing with these type of Republicans. But then at the same time, I just I didn't like I didn't like that he did it. And I didn't like the fact that he did it with Katie Porter. And I actually like I agree with Texas Paul a lot. I love him, but he was really upset with Katie Porter because she spoke out against it. And I just I don't understand. I don't think I didn't expect her not to say anything.
Oh, hell no.
And she's the type of person where she's going to say what she has to say. And Adam Schiff, his comment when people were asking him about what he did, he said she ran her campaign the way she wanted to, and I ran my campaign the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, period. And I
Yeah.
didn't know he was that ruthless. I know now, but I didn't know then.
I'm not
And then you
surprised.
got to think about it. He had Nancy Pelosi on his side doing a lot of fundraising for him and stuff. Like the corporate Dems really does want him in that seat.
Right.
And I don't think without them, he would have been able to pull off $11 million towards Garvey's campaign, but he did. And now he gets to run against the person that he picked to run against.
Right.
Somebody that he's pretty confident that he could beat. If he couldn't even afford his own campaign, then he knows that he's not going to be able to afford a campaign once he pulls his money away from him.
Right.
It was
Right.
just, it was a pretty low down thing to do, but I don't know, I kind of respect it in a way. What do you think?
Well, it's kind of like a championship boxer who's getting up in years and still wants to make money and
Hmm.
does what they call bum of the month club. He set it up so that he's going to get an easy win, and he should get an easy
Mm,
win. I will say this, what we saw of Adam Schiff during the January 6th committee and all these things, he'll be a good senator. And I think
yeah.
in terms of what he wants for the country, it's in the right place. But at the same time, if he and I were in a bar and I was going to get
Hmm.
in a bar fight, probably wouldn't let him hold my wallet because I'm not going to see it again. I mean, that's the thing about politicians, whether they be Democrat or Republican, they are sketchy. And the game of politics in DC is some dirty,
Hmm.
dirty shit. I mean, it's kind of like what we hear about entertainment in Los Angeles. It's cutthroat, it's dirty, it's nasty, it's sketchy. And
Yeah.
clearly that's what we've got going on, especially when it comes to a Senate seat in California. At this point, do I think less of Adam Schiff? Yeah. But the only reason I didn't already think less of him is because I've been distracted by all the crazy shit the Republicans have been doing. But I'm not
Yeah.
surprised that he would do this sort of thing. I'm not surprised. I mean, I think Nancy Pelosi and everybody involved kind of were pissed off at Katie Porter by throwing a fly in the ointment. Let's just
I
give
do
Adam
too.
Schiff, it's his time. We want him there. Just
Hmm.
stay out of it. And Katie Porter stepped in. So she probably stepped on some toes and they fucking put her in her place, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, I was kind of like reading about it. I don't know. I didn't pick up on it till like 2 weeks ago that what was going on, and then I just kind of was like, okay, well, let's just see how this plays out. And then when he made that comment about, well, she ran her campaign the way she wanted to, I did like he really didn't care. It was kind of like, yeah, I did it, and what, like he had that kind of arrogance about him when he was asked about what he did. And it is not bothering him at all what he
No,
did.
no.
But I think you're right. It's so ruthless and cutthroat. I guess you kind of have to be like that to survive in shark infested waters.
Yeah, yeah. It's an unfortunate business out there. I'm not cutting them any slack. I think that's pretty shitty. Um,
Hmm.
and and you have to wonder how often that does go on, probably more than we know. And again,
Yeah.
people have to understand it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats too. And that's why I tell folks, if the Democrats get control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, don't think our work is done here, that we can sit back and they'll do what we want them to do. We still need to
Hmm.
apply the pressure. We still need to
Yep.
push them. So be prepared to keep working, even if Donald Trump loses and the Republicans lose the Senate and the House, because there's still a lot of work to be done. And while they might be Democrats, they're still politicians. You know,
Hmm.
it's there's they're still like those dangerous dogs. You don't know if they're going to bite, so you got to be fucking careful and train them properly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's been so much like noise and distractions from the Republican side that a lot of the underhanded stuff that Democrats do, they've just been like literally like sliding sliding under the radar because they do their dirt on the low. They don't broadcast it to everybody or I mean Katie Porter did because she was pretty pissed off, but typically they just do it on the low and keep it pushing. They don't have to be boastful or bragging about their
Right,
underhandedness, but yeah, it was pretty, and then that these type of Democrats, there's no way they're going to support getting money out of politics to where that type of situation can't happen again in the future because it should have been a fair fight. But because there's money in politics, it wasn't. Those two would be going head to head right now, except Schiff got to pick who he wants to run against. And so that's why it's just important because that's not good or safe for democracy either when you can buy your seat, buy who you want to run against.
right,
That's not good either. And these are the type of people you have to push to get money out of politics and they're not going to go for that type of thing.
right. Well, and
Just
since
as bad.
we're getting toward the end here, but since we're talking about dirty Democrats, I have to bring up Bob Menendez. He went through this whole
Oh,
thing where he's being charged and indicted with some things. Well, it turns out he just got indicted with more shit. I mean, this Bob
yeah,
Menendez is some of the worst as far as being a dirty fucking politicians. And he just happens to be a Democrat. Again, it just
yeah,
proves that it's both sides. It's just they do it differently. So Bob Menendez is probably going to go to jail. He was in bad trouble the first time, and now with these new charges, that old man is fucked at this point. He's going to go to jail. He's just done too much shit and been too arrogant. I mean, I think
yeah,
that's the problem with politicians. They get to that elite status, at least in their own minds, and they get away with shit, whether it be insider trading or bribes or whatever. And they just feel like they're entitled to get that. I'm sure Adam Schiff felt like he was entitled. Nancy Pelosi said
mhm,
she wanted me to be the senator, so I have to, and I'm allowed to do whatever I have to do to become senator. I'm just,
yeah,
I hope that Steve Garvey is that weak candidate. I think he is because he's not that bright. And he's not that good in the debate. You put Schiff and Garvey in a debate, Garvey's going to get fucking destroyed, just absolutely
mhm,
destroyed. So, I mean, if in the end we do have a Democrat in the Senate seat, that's good news. But
yeah,
but with Adam Schiff, as we would with anybody in the Senate or the House, even though he might be a Democrat, even though he might have been on the January 6th committee, we got to keep
yep,
that peripheral vision going on and keep an eye on that motherfucker.
yeah, definitely. And I think that even more so, if there's like a blue wave, because a lot of stuff that Democrats have been doing, they've been able to get away with it because the Republicans are just so outrageous. They
Yeah.
suck up all the oxygen in the room. And when they are comfortable, like Menendez, he's very comfortable.
Yeah.
You have to be comfortable when you're that sloppy, where it's like a breadcrumb leading right to your doorstep. You know what I mean? Like gold bars with serial numbers. Get out of here. It's
Yeah.
just, it's just, and then in your own home, like just
Yeah.
you didn't even try to get away with it. And the reason that that happens is because people get comfortable. They think that they've gotten away with it for this long, they'll be able to away with it forever. And I do think after the election, we just kind of have to keep our eye on them like we would anybody else. That's how Donald Trump got to be Donald Trump, just not
Right.
being held accountable for anything. And
But
This is like our lives and our futures that we're trusting them with. We
Right.
need to, watch out, pay
Well,
attention to them too.
Bob Menendez should have probably watched that documentary on Bernie Madoff because it doesn't last forever. You eventually get
No.
caught.
Mm-hmm.
All right, old soul, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Thank you for coming in again. It's always a pleasure and
Yeah.
always enlightening when you do come in. So I appreciate it very much.
Thanks.
Those of you listening, thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.